not to sort of, use a Tom Jones song title here with the green grass at home, but I'd love to
I can't.
I couldn't help myself, Will. Sorry.
Wait, as long as you don't sing, okay?
So I was kind of hoping maybe we'd get a couple bars from Tom today.
Well, hello and welcome to the stream, an unscripted, unedited, free-flowing conversation featuring guests who reject the status quo with a bias for action in the world of water and beyond. My name is Tom Freyberg, and I'm an environmental journalist and content creator specializing in water.
And I'm Will Sarney, a water strategy consultant and investor doing my part to solve wicked water problems.
And we are thrilled to be back for season 6, which is going to look just at the Colorado River Basin, featuring utilities, investors, researchers, and the agriculture sector to really shine a light on some of the key stakeholders. And a big thanks to our sponsor, who is Raymond James, for season 6. So to kickstart the season with a bang, we are delighted to welcome Dave Johnson, who is the Deputy General Manager of Operations for the Southern Nevada Water Authority. Dave, good to see you, and thanks for joining and kickstarting season 6. How are you?
I'm doing great. Hey, thanks, Tom and Will, for having me. I'm excited to be here and kind of share some of the things that we're doing in Southern Nevada and hopefully debunk a few myths that come up on a routine basis associated with wicked water problems.
Love it. Well, we're all for debunking myths. So yeah, thanks for joining us. Dave, loads of stuff we want to chat to you about. But I guess to give some context, particularly on being a utility in the Colorado River Basin, give us a bit of sort of context, background, size and scope of the Southern Nevada water utility, if you will.
Absolutely. So we here in Southern Nevada have about 2.3 million residents. We are also very unique in the fact that we have 40 million annual tourists. So at any given time, we can have our normal population of 2.3 plus another, say, 350,000 people that are in our service territory, which is quite interesting. We take 90% of our water from the Colorado River. The other 10% is from our local aquifer. And that 90% goes a long way with respect to providing water for our customer base. On the Colorado River, our original apportionment is 300,000 acre feet, which when you put it in the context of the overall Colorado River Basin, it's less than 2% of the overall allocation that comes for Nevada. And so we have for years and years been really working hard to try to extend that resource as far as we possibly can. And a lot of our conversation, I think, today will highlight some of those initiatives. And so I would just say that innovation, because of necessity, has been baked into our culture. It's been baked into basically our thought processes and everything we do. Very, very interested in making sure that we continue to strive to be the most water efficient municipality, utility, however you want to frame it, that we can possibly be given the situation that we face.
Yeah, I think there's something to be said for necessity as a mother of invention, right? So actually, given where you are and the location having to be innovative, it's not a case of sort of retrospectively thinking, oh, we have to sort of tick this innovation box. But what was the number again on the tourist flux from Las Vegas coming in every year? It was...
Yeah, so we have 40 million annual
40
tourists.
million annual tourists, right.
And so I would say at any given time, you could have 300 to 350,000 additional people here in Las Vegas over the base population. So it represents some interesting challenges, but it also has some fantastic opportunity when you think about how our actual system is designed and the messaging ability that we have for people coming here. So it's both a let's call it an opportunity, and it's also a challenge.
Dave, it strikes me that that surge in terms of number of people that you touch and you provide services to is in fact an opportunity, in that when they visit Las Vegas, they can get a real appreciation for your strategy, your thinking, driving innovation to the point where, water's not an issue in a way. I mean, I love how you sort of teed this up about debunking myths, because Tom and I were talking before, this episode, and I was saying that, if you look back years ago, people would question, like, why does Las Vegas exist in the desert? Why does Phoenix exist in the desert? And, folks like you have moved the conversation to, well, of course you can build a city in the desert with very little water and, build a sustainable and resilient path forward. So I think the narrative has really changed, and the brand has really changed. And, you've been part of that. So really an interesting shift just over, I would say, a relatively short period of time.
Yeah, and I would, I know we're going to talk about some of these initiatives here during our chat, but I would give you this statistic just to kind of frame that, and that is that since 2002, our population here in Southern Nevada has grown by approximately 50%. And at that same period of time, we've driven our consumptive water use down by 25%. So when you look at it, it's extremely counterintuitive, and it just demonstrates the fact that you can have a growing, thriving economy and population base for instance, in our location, and still drive water use down at the same time, as long as you are being very thoughtful about that conversation and you are educating the population of your service territory and making sure that they understand what the issue is and working on that modification. So it's absolutely the case. It's absolutely possible. And, Las Vegas has built itself on making sure that people understand this is a super desirable place to come and have a good time.
Right.
Mhm.
And so, that whole picture that sometimes is painted of opulence and throw caution to the wind when it comes to resources, it's just not true. And when you get into the detail associated with actually how much water is used, for instance, by the resort corridor, in comparison to the amount of revenue that's generated, it's staggering. I mean, the amount of water use is so low, given the economic impact of that segment of our economy. So it really is a fantastic story, and sometimes a little challenging to tell, because it is what people see is not, they don't really always take the time to look under the hood and find out what the reality of the circumstances.
It also strikes me, based on conversations that you and I have had with, the private sector in Las Vegas, that you have really been a catalyst to create essentially a competitive advantage with the community, that you serve, and your network, which, is really interesting also, and is perhaps counterintuitive from historically how people have looked at, places like Las Vegas and Phoenix and so on. So there's been a real shift in the right direction.
There has been, Will, it's an all hands on deck situation. I mean, we, as the water utility, we have over 1,000 employees that are all rowing in the same direction, trying to, be creative, trying to ensure that what we do every day is in the best interest of our community. But we can't do it alone. We have to make sure that the initiatives that make up our plan, and we'll talk about that soon, our 50-year resource plan, and the conservations that make initiatives that make up that 50-year resource plan, we have to make sure that business is part of that. We just took on a significant initiative here in Southern Nevada associated with what is our second largest consumptive use of water, and that is evaporative cooling. Mm-hmm. And to think that we would be able to embark on that journey and be successful in that initiative without the private sector is just not even a thought process. And so taking all of the time, energy, and partnerships that have been generated to make that effective is the only path towards success. And so we're very excited about that. That's going to make a huge difference for our community, and the business leaders in our community stepped up in a big way and did things that they were in some cases uncomfortable with, and didn't know all the answers to, in an effort to make sure that we're providing a sustainable future.
Hey, Dave, can you talk about that in terms of, evaporative cooler thinking and opportunity and so on? I mean, that as a technology category, I think this is really interesting and worth providing some additional details to, in terms of the position you took and then how you engaged with the private sector in Las Vegas to move in the right direction.
You bet. And I'll take it back, Will, to a discussion about our 50-year resource plan, and this being one of the major initiatives. Southern Nevada Water Authority for years has had a 50-year resource plan that we update annually. In that 50-year resource plan, we make sure that we're accounting for population increase, that we're accounting for future climate-related headwinds that we expect to see. And we put specific measures in place from a conservation standpoint to make sure that that 50-year resource plan ties out. The first and largest area of consumptive water use here in Southern Nevada is associated with landscape, particularly grass. And we've done quite a few things associated with making sure that that turf grass is only in those locations where it needs to be for a desert community. Our second largest consumptive use of water is with evaporative cooling, as we were just discussing. And so evaporative cooling, the context behind it is that as Vegas was growing and, in a desert community, you can imagine that the most efficient, least cost solution for cooling your building was the evaporation of water. So right. Whether it be a swamp cooler, whether it be a cooling tower, those types of traditional technologies, we took on this initiative and said, if we're going to make a meaningful difference associated with water reduction, we have to address this. And so we began to engage with the business community at very, very early on in this thinking and talk about what was the state of even metering. Many of the towers, swamp coolers didn't even have metering on them to be able to tell us and quantify how much water was being used. So as we started going through those conversations, we pretty quickly determined that really what we needed to do was we needed to put in place a moratorium for new builds with evaporative cooling. So looking at different technologies, whether that be mechanical cooling, hybrid, any of the various suite of technologies that exist. And then we also need to work with our existing evaporative cooler community and make sure that our incentive programs that we have for conversion were adequate to be able to allow folks to make those decisions. And we've had really, really good success. We've had good success with putting the code in place to support the moratorium. And we've had a number of large properties, small properties, a lot of interest in working with SNWA, both on the incentive portion and the technology portion for the replacement of existing. And what we're really finding is as people are getting to the end of their useful life with respect to their existing evaporative cooler bank, then they will approach us and say, hey, I'd like to do something different, something more sustainable, et cetera. And we can partner with them to do that. So it's I would call it a business-friendly approach. And something that can be economically sustainable for businesses in Southern Nevada. So I think those partnerships are really the key. And we literally, we attended hundreds of different meetings with small groups, large groups, HVAC groups, resort groups, NAOP, all of those different entities here in Southern Nevada to try to make sure that we educated, that we were partnering, and that we heard from the community associated with what their concerns were. And I think that was really the key to going from great concern when we first rolled this idea out to a place where at our board meeting a year later, all of those people stood up in favor of doing the hard things that we needed to do associated with the initiative.
And not to dominate the conversation, Tom, but I find this to be fascinating because it's, more than just innovation and technology. It's innovation and, partnerships and, collaboration and so on, that I find to be really impressive and absolutely critical. Are you passing along that knowledge? You're one of the leading utilities of the world. I assume that you have the ability to scale your impact through the learnings around, taking a policy position and then collaborating and driving new technology. So are you seeing a lot of that happening as a knockoff from your
we're working hard to do that. The answer is yeah. We have several different forums where we can share the information. We've had conversations with different utilities throughout the world and water stressed communities that are interested in what we're doing. I would say that I would love for it to be, our learnings and our knowledge be more broadly available to folks, because as we've talked about before, one of the things I love about the water industry is that utilities aren't competitive from that standpoint. If we come up with a great approach, a great idea, I want to share it because I want everybody to be up to speed and able to at least gain from some of the learnings that we have, and for us to gain from other people's learnings. So I would characterize it as we're doing that, but it's a little slower road than I wish it would be.
Got it.
Well, it makes total sense, doesn't it? To sort of share your 20-year journey on water demand management and what you've learned, and sort of having to innovate and facing essentially water scarcity from a sort of earlier stage, and share that with utilities who are facing that today. But another point you mentioned, Dave, which was really interesting, is the kind of the one of the biggest uses of water historically was grass or turf, right? And not to sort of use a Tom Jones song title here of the green grass at home, but I'd love to sort of.
I can't.
I couldn't help myself. Will, sorry.
Wait, as long as you don't sing, okay?
So I was kind of hoping maybe we'd get a couple bars from Tom today.
That's
good, Dave.
That's the after hours. Yeah, thanks for the vote of confidence, Dave. Clearly, you've never heard me sing before. Although, funnily enough, if my mother's maiden name was Jones, so had she kept that name, my name would be Tom Jones. How random would that be? But anyway, just to on
well, there goes this episode.
Yeah, sorry guys, we've thrown a very serious conversation.
It's okay.
I clearly know my role, right? But you've mentioned about sort of limiting the use of the Colorado River for, you class it as non-functional turf, right? So run us through that. So this is because obviously here in the UK we get a lot of rain. A lot of people have grass lawns at home and they're very proud of it. But actually talk us through that and actually the kind of the enforcement side of things, and how that's kind of made a difference to the actual water output of the utility as well.
Yeah, I'll give you a high level overview of kind of our journey on turf grass. Back in 2002, when we were struggling with bumping up actually against our allocation during that period of time, we realized that a lot of people had moved to Southern Nevada throughout the years leading up to 2002 and brought their nice lush garden with them, their nice landscape and grass with them. So things like Kentucky bluegrass and, absolutely grass that was not appropriate for a desert community was pretty prolific. HOAs, homeowners associations, and residential neighborhoods were putting grass in locations simply for the purpose of beauty and aesthetics. Something you could never have a picnic on, something you could never walk on. You may have had a slope that was too high to even be able to walk up that. It served no functional purpose, but it was mostly for beautification. And so what we did, we started off in 2002 with a program we called Water Smart Landscapes. And Water Smart Landscape program was where we would actually incentivize people a portion of the removal cost of their turf so that they would look at that program and help feel as though that we were partnering with them. It also had pretty aggressive requirements associated with what had to go back in. Desert-friendly landscape. It couldn't just be rocks. It had to be something that had some beautification ability. It has to have a certain amount of canopy requirement also to combat urban heat island impacts. And it was a relatively sophisticated program and still is to this day. Now, what we've done about 2.5 years ago, the Nevada legislature, we put a bill forward called AB 356, and that was the non-functional turf bill that we currently have in place. And what that did is that said by 2026, you could no longer use Colorado River water for the purposes of irrigating what we call non-functional turf. The bill also required that we put together a committee so that we could ferret out the specific definitions of what non-functional turf actually is. So we put a citizens committee together and we put those definitions together, and now that is in place. And a very, very layman's way of looking at this is if the only time that you can go on that grass is to mow it, then it's something that's appropriate to have in the Mojave Desert, right?
Right.
I mean, you want to be able to have recreational value, you can walk your dog, whatever. But so if you take that extremely layman's definition and translate that into some pretty specific guidelines, that's what's in place here. And so what we've seen is industrial commercial. I mean, we would have a gas station, and then that gas station would have a strip of grass that was a couple feet wide, then a sidewalk, then another couple feet wide strip of grass, and then the street. There was no functional purpose for that to occur here in this community. And that's just one of many, many examples. And so that's what we have been working on with respect to that. And we've had, there was a lot of education at the beginning, a lot of concern, because some of these, homeowners associations, people purchased a home and in that area, and they really liked the grass that they had, whether it be in the entryway or the entryway into their let's call it their secondary subdivision. And so, but I also think that the education that we've done, the work we've done, the outreach we've done with the community has helped people realize that they can look at that a little bit differently than they have in the past. So, I go back to this and I talk about this pretty routinely. One of the biggest things that we do associated with innovation is behavior modification and the education associated with behavior modification, because I find generally that people, even though we all have our own self-interest, generally our community has accepted these changes that have been made once they understand kind of the why behind what we're doing.
That's such a good point, isn't it? That's such a good point, because actually people, if you take the example you're just talking about of grass, people were perhaps personally attached to it for aesthetics, personal reasons, right? And then it's only until they understand the environmental implications of trying to grow and irrigate grass in the desert, and then with the right education and information from the utility to sort of help with that behavioral change. And actually, because if you sort of came in with an outright ban, it probably wouldn't have worked as successfully, right? So it's actually the education has been the key part of that.
It really has with all of our initiatives, and I could go through a laundry list of them. And one of the things we battle here too in Las Vegas, at least historically, is it's been a relatively transient community in the past. And so you have to be ever so vigilant associated with educating people, because they turn over. And then you've got a new group of folks that come in and they don't understand, and you have to kind of keep that message up. Our marketing folks and our advertising folks have done a phenomenal job of making sure that people understand, hey, when you buy a house here, we have a watering schedule. We have a time of day. We have a no watering on Sundays. And oh, by the way, we also have enforcement. So, you may see some of our cars that roll by that are looking to make sure that everybody is complying with our restrictions. And just, again, one example of many that are relevant to trying to make sure that the community continues to do the right things. And they have. It's been a very successful story.
It's so key to economic development. I mean, everyone wants a thriving economic setting, and water plays a key role in that in the American West. I mean, I sit in Denver, and yeah, it's top of mind, as it should be, because if we do better with water, that means that we can grow and improve the quality of life, and so on. Dave, we touched on innovation a bit, and I wanted to bring up WaterStart and your relationship there, and how you see that knitting into your strategy right now and going forward, and so on. So a little bit of how that came about, and where are you going with it?
Absolutely. Well, WaterStart is basically a compilation of global water leaders trying to solve challenges and basically accelerate the adoption of innovative solutions. One of the problems that we have in the water space, and maybe any innovation space is kind of this death by pilot type situation.
Otherwise known as pilotitis. Yeah.
Yes, that's exactly right. And WaterStart really was founded and has, I'll call it, grown into a space where trusted utilities amongst each other are using results from pilots that we've done through the WaterStart model to be able to accelerate the adoption of those solutions. So many examples associated with that. But in the context of Southern Nevada, what we have benefited from WaterStart is that WaterStart will actually, it's a not-for-profit that actually comes alongside us, helps to solve a solution. We bring forward a problem, and WaterStart works with us to come up with what are the technology solutions that are available in that space. Mm-hmm. They will do things like going out and putting an RFP out for various solutions and help us to co-fund that pilot. And if somebody has already actually gone through the pilot and found a successful solution, they will marry us up, and we have with that utility, and then we have the ability to leverage the learning and the work that's already been done in that space, and potentially even avoid a pilot and just goes directly to a solution. But in many cases, we've been able to find very successful technology solutions by working with WaterStart. I sit on the board of that, and I'm really proud to see how that organization has progressed through the years.
It really does seem to be a very unique platform, program, whatever we want to call it. And Nate refers to what he does as having a procurement accelerator, which I think is a really interesting way to frame it. Starting with the problem that you're trying to solve, and then searching for technologies and innovative business models that can be brought to bear. So it's sort of a very unique view of how do you get around the pilot.
Absolutely.
Do loop, if you will.
No, it absolutely is. And most of these solutions, we live in a world of competitive bid and those types of situations. Well, for these types of solutions, there's really not a competitive bid process for most of them, mm-hmm. because you're looking at a single innovator, for instance, that has a technology or solution. And if you can go through the WaterStart process, it really has accelerated our ability to procure. No doubt.
Dave, from conversations sort of on this whole, death by piloting and the need to share more information, do you have, within that network, is there an example where you kind of sharing where things don't quite often work? Because I think it's very good to sort of share examples of successful pilots, but actually one problem particularly that was discussed within the UK setting was if a particular technology isn't successful for that application, actually sharing where things don't often work as well.
That's a great question. And I candidly left out a really important part of WaterStart's model, which is the channels for innovation platform. What that is that's where members and utilities have the ability to see the results, that not just the success. We put mm-hmm. the actual results of those pilots and make those available via case studies to all of the utilities that are a part of that platform. And so, it really is exactly what you're saying there. It's not just I'll call it like the social media stream of this is my best life. It is
the Instagram, the glossy holiday pictures is actually the nitty gritty where things don't quite work out. That is shared as well, right?
It is. And with the whole idea being, if you do have an innovation as an innovator and you can get a successful pilot and then a successful pilot into an adoption within the actual utility, that's a success that's shared with several others. And so that's very valuable, particularly for those innovators that are coming from abroad, trying to get into the US market, which can sometimes be very challenging. And so, yeah, definitely we get to see both sides of the actual results of the pilot itself.
Radical transparency. I love it.
Refreshing to hear. And I think it's, as you mentioned, to see where things work out and don't work out in an open platform to those utility members. That's remarkable. And yeah, Dave, in terms of then sort of at the end of the recording almost, what are your plans next? What can we sort of look forward to hearing from you in terms of like newer developments or things that you're working on sort of moving into the next couple of years?
Yeah, one of the things that we are working hard right now on is actually partnering with the economic development authorities here in the state and also in Las Vegas to implement what we call our water investment rating tool. And what that basically is a tool that assesses economic development opportunities that are interested in, or that we are interested in having come to Southern Nevada from a water perspective. We, in the past, have not, as the utility, had a seat at the table when it comes to large opportunities coming to Nevada, coming to Las Vegas. We may end up getting a phone call and say, hey, do you have enough water to be able to distribute to this particular area or whatever, but never a programmatic, methodical ability to evaluate. So we've actually developed a tool that takes into account gross water use and consumptive water use and economic factors like number of jobs, tax revenue, average wage, those kinds of things, and also societal benefits. Is it an industry? Is it an opportunity that has unique benefit to Southern Nevada because it's something we lack? And we can put all of this information into this tool, and it gives us a rating and lets us know, essentially, it puts it into three categories. It's either this is a really good water investment for Southern Nevada, this is a very poor water investment for Southern Nevada, or it falls in between and really needs some additional analysis. And so what we are working to do is to get acceptance right now amongst the different municipalities so that this tool can be applied to any economic development opportunity in any of the municipalities, so that we don't end up with having differing evaluations occur based on what city you might be interested in going to, et cetera, and really help us to make sure that we are factoring water in a way that is as meaningful as it needs to be in the economic development process. We're not aware of something like this having been created before. We found that it is really beneficial, and we're getting, candidly, we're getting very, very good acceptance from the economic development community because they understand what this looks like. And back to my previous conversation, it's not about whether you grow, in our opinion. It is about how you grow. So if you do it the right way and you partner to do it the right way, then you can provide a vibrant future for economic development opportunities here. And that's really what we're trying to accomplish.
I think that's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. And I agree with you that it's not about, growth or no growth. It's how do you do it? It's fueling growth in the right way.
But it's smart, isn't it? Because it's win-win. It also makes sure that water is front of that conversation on that very early stage discussion of whether a company wants to put a business in your remit as well, right? It's from the very get-go. It's like actually water needs to be part of the conversation, and your utility has a seat at the table to make sure that the company is thinking of that from the very start.
Absolutely. And what we're trying to do in the process of this is to have that tool and have this information applied as early in the process as possible, so that we don't intersect people that are wanting to buy land and wanting to put in a business, et cetera, too far into the process when they've already made an investment. We're trying to apply this at the very, very beginning as a threshold issue. And that's what we're working on right now with the different municipalities to make sure that we have that process ironed out so that it is uniformly applied and it's also located in the right part of their processes.
This is interesting, a much longer conversation, but I see this as in parallel to what the private sector does to varying degrees. Certainly leading private sector companies are adding a lot of rigor to how water factors into their business continuity and business growth. So you're, doing that in parallel with that. And then, obviously a key part of site selection criteria that companies have when they decide where they're going to go. And, is there enough water, and, what that looks like. And again, it goes back to the competitive advantage that, you have built for the region, which I think is really interesting.
And I think, Will, you mentioned Site Selector, just to give you some perspective on the partnership that has been created. The Las Vegas Global Economic Alliance, which is the entity that oversees development here in Southern Nevada, actually invites us to come and speak to site selectors, national site selectors, and in concert when they come to Las Vegas to evaluate opportunities. So I've met a number of the site selectors and given them presentations on how sustainable our resource is, the fact that we have a 50-year resource plan, the types of initiatives that we're doing, and what we're looking for. And so to have a seat at the table in those meetings, talking about water resources is refreshing and actually fantastic. It demonstrates the partnership that we've been able to work to create.
I think that's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
Well, Dave, I can see why other utilities around the world are sort of looking to you guys for the leadership and innovation, and it's remarkable across the different areas what you're doing. So yeah, thanks so much for joining us on the stream. It's always interesting to sort of hear the story and the context behind the utility and what you guys are doing. So yeah, big thanks. Will, any final wrap up comments from yourself?
Yeah, so I echo the thanks, Dave. Thanks for being really the kickoff and framing water as an opportunity and a driver for not just economic development, business growth, but you brought up the social piece of it, and I think you really nailed it in terms of how to frame where we need to go and get us away from the sky is falling, we can't do anything. Well, no, we can. And you're a really good example of what can be done when you think creatively. And also the one thing I would add is how you're thinking about partnerships, for me, is probably where we're going to have the biggest impact going forward. A lot of technology out there, but engaging with all stakeholders to row together. And I'm partial to rowing, but I love that you framed it that way. I think it's absolutely true.
Yeah, what we as a community have been able to accomplish is it has to have everybody involved. All of our employees are working hard on these measures, and the business community and the residential community as well. And so, there's a little bit of pain for everybody in the conservation plan that we put together, that no doubt about it, but it's really going to pay off. The long-term sustainability of our water resource really depends on it. And so I really appreciate the time that you guys have let me share with respect to the things that we're doing. And it's always great to talk to both of you guys.
Well, thanks. Mutual. All right. Well, Dave, have a great week. What's left of it?
Yeah, absolutely. You too.
Thanks, Dave. Appreciate
All
your
right.
time. Take care. Cheers. Bye-bye.